All right, it's 9:35. It's Hot Talk 99.5 and the Hot Talk Morning Show, along with Dave Priest and Leanne Graham. I had to do a little bit of internet searching because I'll be honest with you, I was not really familiar with everything that was going on as far as World Trade Center 7 is concerned, 7 World Trade Center. I got some information the other day from some people who were putting together a movie called 7. And it's about 7 World Trade Center. So I had to do some quick research just to remind myself of everything that happened. I'm not going to give you everything here because we'll talk to some of the people here behind the movie. On the phone with us right now, we've got the director of the film, Dylan Avery, and also Roland Angle, who is a civil engineer at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, who did some of the research behind the movie and the investigation into why this building fell down. Gentlemen, I didn't get a chance to talk to you ahead of time, but thanks for joining us here this morning. We really appreciate you taking some time out.
Thanks for having us on, Dave.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah.
Now, I guess Dylan, we'll start off with you as the director. I don't know. I know that there's going to be some shorts or some trailers are going to be starting airing today, and so interest in this is going to be going up. But when is this going to be shown? When can people see this? I know that theaters are really not doing a whole lot right now. So where can people see this film?
Yeah, from my understanding, there's the 5-minute version of the film that is going to be available today through PBS's Spotlight branch of their website. So that's pretty exciting. It's funny because, we originally were just going to do our full-length edit of the doc, which was almost done, and then we had an opportunity to screen a much shorter version on PBS. So now that the 5-minute version is done and out of the way, the 45-minute version is also almost done, and we actually have a couple things in the works. Basically, a distributor reached out to us that was interested in the project, so we need to get a screener to them, working on a couple other things with it. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting.
All right. Go ahead and tell us, a little bit about the story, either Roland or Dylan, about for people who don't remember what happened on that day, on 9/11, as far as 7 World Trade Center is concerned. And let me first off say what I said about it half an hour ago. I don't like to do a lot of things about 9/11 where people are saying, oh, well, this was, brought down by these people or it didn't happen or whatever. But since no lives were lost by the collapse of 7 World Trade Center, I don't feel like we're just doing any disservice to anybody who may have been hurt for that. So that's why this is an interesting story. But Dylan or Roland, what's the story behind the collapse of 7 World Trade Center and why is it a mystery?
Roland, I'm going to let you take that one.
Okay. First of all, I just want to clear up one thing. I am not at the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Sorry.
I'm a civil engineer that is on the board of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and we hired the University of Alaska Fairbanks to do this study, which is essentially an attempt to reproduce the results that were found by the official government report on why this building fell down that was performed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and that report was released back in 2008. And so in the interest of scientific method, we are trying to reproduce their results. So that's what the team at the University of Alaska Fairbanks attempted to do with their computer modeling. And the problem with this report and the building collapse in general is that there had never been a building, a high-rise building that had ever collapsed solely due to fire, as the NIST report claimed. So from an engineering perspective, we were very interested in this building failure because it has a lot of implications for our profession. And what we found with Professor Halsey's report was that he could not reproduce the same results that they came up with. They said the building came down due to some fires on the lower floors. And when Professor Halsey and his team input that same data, that same fire load on the building, they could not get it to come down at all in any manner. And so we've got a contradiction here that we've got to deal with in our professional expertise, because we have to explain things like this. We have to understand why these failures occur. They're very important for us to study so that we can improve our understanding of how these things might occur and prevent them from happening in the future, as is our duty to protect the safety of the public. So that's sort of the backstory. We tried to reproduce the NIST report. We could not do that. We found out that in order to get the building to come down the way it did, there would have had to have been the removal of all the columns on 8 floors simultaneously in order for the building to get to come down that way. So that's a completely different scenario than fires.
So why is it important to get the truth of what happened in Building 7 out to architects and engineers? How is that going to change the future of either of those fields?
Well, in the first place, if what the NIST report said is true, there should have been widespread changes to the structural building codes and the procedures that are standard in the industry for construction and design of these buildings. There were no such structural changes made to the codes, and so that's a contradiction. If you had a building failure that was a result of certain problems with the way it was constructed, then you would want to go back and change the code to make sure that that didn't happen in the future. And so the future safety of the public is what we are concerned with and what our professional expertise makes us duty-bound to explore. So that's why we need to understand what happened here. And right now, we don't have an understanding because we have 2 reports that directly contradict one another, and so we have to resolve the question as to which one of those analyses is correct.
We're talking with Dylan Avery, the director of the film 7, and also Roland Angle, civil engineer, did extensive studies on why 7 World Trade Center came down on 9/11. Now, this came down, as Roland was saying, about 8 hours after the initial planes went into the 2 towers, and the official report was that fires way down low. Now, Dylan, when you were putting this together, obviously, did you get any pushback from people who were behind there? Were people telling you that you're a conspiracy theorist and that you need to leave this alone? What kind of reaction were you getting when you were putting this together?
Oh, I mean, I already had to deal with that 15 years ago when I made Loose Change, so I've weathered the storm, as it were. And honestly, apart from my work on the Loose Change series, I haven't really done much with 9/11 since, only because, I said what I had to say with those films, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life talking about the murder of 3,000 people. So when Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth reached out to me in search of a director for the project, and, I learned about the Fairbanks study, I learned about the ramifications of it. To me, as a storyteller, it provided a new opportunity to look at something that some people might think that they either A, don't want to hear about anymore, or B, feel like they already know everything about. And I think that was also the appeal of this project, is that it's not a bunch of, quote, conspiracy theorists that are interviewed for this. We have highly respected engineers. There's 3 of which that are featured in the film, apart from Professor Leroy Halsey. There's Roland, obviously. There's Kamal Obeid, who is a structural engineer in Berkeley. And then there's also Scott Granger, who's based out of Arizona, and he's a fire protection engineer. So you have these 3 very respected engineers, along with Professor Leroy Halsey at the Fairbanks of Alaska, who is also a very respected engineering professor there. And I think it's interesting that not only has he had the full support of UAF behind the study, their seal is on the front page of the report. So for all intents and purposes, the findings of Professor Halsey are backed by the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And so I think it's very important for people to understand that we're not necessarily talking about a conspiracy theory. You're not talking to a bunch of nut jobs here. These are people who are very skilled in what they do, and they simply have the courage to stand up and say, hey, these findings don't check out.
So, Dylan, obviously, Roland just told us why it's important that we know the truth about Building 7 because of the integrity of structural engineering, code, and design. But obviously, there was a cover-up. What is our government going to do about that?
Well, unfortunately, I think if they were going to do anything about it, they already would have. And I think that's why it's so important that we have to keep talking about this and getting the message out, because the government, for all intents and purposes, closed the book on Building 7 and said, look, it was a new phenomenon called thermal expansion. It made column 79 destabilize and brought the rest of the building down, which is, again, a phenomenon that, A, we've never heard of before, and B, has never happened before. So I unfortunately don't have much faith in the government doing anything about this, because they already had a chance to do so. But that's why I feel that this film is important. And Roland, maybe you can back me up on this. This is why the film is important, because it's a chance to get this message out to the engineering community so they can truly understand what it is we've been talking about for the last almost 20 years. And then hopefully we can get a coalition going to either get a new government investigation, but I simply have no faith in that. So I believe it would have to be an independent investigation. And again, you raised a very interesting point that, officially nobody died in Building 7. And so it does make it a little bit easier to talk about this without a lot of the, let's say, emotion that is involved when it comes to talking about the Twin Towers. Roland?
Yeah, one of the things, our strategy at this point is to try to get the NIST report corrected. So there's a process that you can go through with any government agency. There's laws that require them to issue only truthful and accurate statements to the public, and so we are utilizing those laws, and we filed a report, a request for correction with NIST in April, and they have 4 months to respond to that. And in that request for corrections, we have pointed out 8 separate areas of the NIST report that are not accurate, that contain false and misleading information. And we are asking NIST to correct that information. And so they have, by law, 4 months to respond to us. So on August 15th, they are due to come back at us and explain why either their original conclusions were accurate or our corrections of those conclusions are accurate. So that's a methodology that, as engineers, we are pursuing, and we hope to get some answers from NIST as to why these differences exist and some justification for why their answers were correct, or else they'll change them. So that's the next step in the process. This is part of a larger process of us awakening the engineering and architectural professions to understand that the cover-up of this incident has only been made possible because they claim that the engineering profession stands behind the NIST reports. We are pointing out that the engineering profession does not stand behind the NIST reports, and therefore the NIST report needs to be revisited.
And I guess before we let you go, I guess the big question, and this would be for you, Roland, as a 50-year civil engineer, with your experience and going through all the recreations that you guys did, what brought down 7 World Trade Center? What actually caused its collapse?
We feel the evidence shows strongly that it must have been the controlled demolition, because there was other evidence that was not considered in the NIST report that shows, and which the University of Alaska Fairbanks therefore did not input into their model. But there was evidence of explosives found in the dust. There was heat, extremely high temperatures that some of the steel was exposed to that could not have been caused by temperatures of office fires. There was molten metal found in the basement of all 3 buildings that only could have been caused by a device, incendiary devices, and there were numerous accounts of explosions that occurred during the day that NIST discounted. So we feel that evidence strongly shows that it must have been a controlled demolition.
All right. Well, guys, we've run out of time here, but we appreciate your time. Dylan Avery, director of the new film called 7. It's going to be available on the PBS. Is it going to be on the air, or is it going to be on their website, Dylan?
I know for a fact it's going to be on their PBS Spotlight series website.
Okay.
I think they work there. I think they're reaching out to affiliates right now, so I unfortunately don't have full details on whether it'll be broadcast on TV. I imagine it will, though.
And when you get to the full length of this documentary put together, that'll be coming out at a later date, but you'll be seeing at least the initial parts of it right now. It's called Seven, if you'd like to look it up. And Roland Angle, who's a civil engineer, was involved with the research behind all of this. Dylan, Roland, thanks for your time here today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Well, I guess it's only Thursday, isn't it? I'm thinking it's Friday. Start your weekend early, then, in that case. And thanks for your time here today, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Dave.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate that. It's 9:51. It's Hot Talk 99.5 and the Hot Talk Morning Show, along with Dave and Leanne. Probably you probably find it on YouTube too. You think?
I am putting links to it on our Facebook page.
Okay, well there you go. You can go to our Facebook page. That'll be perfect. Go to Facebook WRNN.net and no, I'm sorry. Our Facebook page is WRNN 995. I'm all over the place. I thought it was Friday a second ago.
We should already be someone you like on Facebook, so just type WRNN.
That's right. Just look at our Facebook page and check that all out. So, and again, I do want to say what I said at the beginning. If this was the Twin Towers, I would have probably been a little bit more reluctant to do something. But since this was 7 World Trade Center where there were no casualties, just questions, I don't feel bad about asking questions about what's going on.
You know, never feel bad about seeking out truth and justice.
Yeah, but some people get upset, especially